trainers identify them, introduce themselves. Thank you.
Hello, my name is David McArthur. I worked with the White Earth Nation, developing healing and wellness courts for about 13 years. Prior to that, I worked in law enforcement for 14 years as a chief of police in a small couple little towns in northern Minnesota. Worked in corrections, was a dispatcher for a few years. I also consult with the state of Minnesota to build tribal courts or diversion courts or juvenile wellness courts with the state. So I'm happy to be here today, and I hope we are able to answer some of your questions and provide some good information.
Thank you, David. Leah?
Hi, my name is Leah Hitcher. I am the coordinator for the Healing to Wellness Court for Cherokee Nation. My background is not law enforcement, it is social work. I came to the Juvenile Justice Department during the planning phase for our Healing to Wellness Court. Previously, I worked with Indian Child Welfare, working with tribal families within the Cherokee Nation Reservation. And I hope we're able to have some good discussions today, and Dave and I are able to help provide some information and help anybody with working on implementation of their tribal courts.
So we'll just go ahead and let the presenters dictate the pace of the presentation for this morning. So go ahead and you could pursue with your first slide whenever you're ready to go.
Dave, do you want to start with on some of the strategies for staff to advocate on behalf of youth participants?
Yeah, some of the things that we did with White Earth to work on strategies or to support our youth when they come through the program was our case managers really became like a voice for the youth. When they were having some issues and different things with other agencies that were working with our programming, it was kind of the job of our case managers to make sure that these kids' voice was heard. If there was appointments that were being missed, if there was things that were going on, they were there to kind of get these kids involved and get them get the proper information out to the different agencies. Some of the things that we've seen when we started our programming is that we've seen a lot of mental health issues and different things that our kids were dealing with. Some of the home issues that were going on that was preventing our kids from making court appearances, preventing them from making appointments, different things like that. So we started building kind of like a little infrastructure that was able to come out, pick the kid up, get them to their appointments, get them to the court hearings, assist the families with their needs on travel and stuff like that. So when we talk about different strategies, I mean, all the different things that happen in these youth's daily lives, like things we thought were easy, like transportation, making appointments, going to school, working on homework, all these different things that we kind of take for granted, a lot of our youth struggled with. So we had to come up with different ways to be able to assist and help those individuals, you know, become, I guess, more involved. So there's a lot of different ways that we can come up with different strategies to help our youth, and it's got to be kind of like a case by case basis, and what's the barriers in your community, and trying to figure out ways to work around those barriers and support our youth and get them going in the right direction. So those are just a few things that we've just a few examples of what we've done to try to help our kids and advocate and stand, I guess, make a stand to help them move forward in life.
I feel like within our reservation, our youth see some of the similar problems as Dave at White Earth. One thing that we do, some strategies we take, is that we look at it as walking alongside the families and the youth. So we will go with them because sometimes it's scary to go into social service offices and ask for help. I think some of our families and kids are scared to do that because they put themselves at the mercy of those agencies. They let them in and become vulnerable. So one thing we try to do is we try to eliminate that by going with them or making the phone calls. One of the things we identified is that our kids have a hard time getting back into school and even reentry into the community setting. Sometimes the community as a whole or the reservations aren't accepting of them because they've caused so much trouble. So they perceive them as the bad kids. And so some of the things we've done as strategies is we, in the planning phase, we worked with some of our community members who do cultural activities and different activities in the community. And we asked, would you accept our kids out here, letting them know that our kids are working with the justice system, but we want to try to get them back into these healthy communities and make connections with people that can help them get jobs and help their families. And because that's what tribal communities do, that's what families do. And so we want them to experience that. And so we have our kids go out to community events, and in everything we do in those things, we do planned events. So we have staff present with them at all times. And some of the feedback we got on that was that they loved that because then they felt comfortable to go into those settings because we were the familiar face to them. And we helped them to feel comfortable going into new places and meeting new people. We will do things like advocate for them and going into the school system. If they're having trouble getting into school, we don't mind to make phone calls, write letters, or do things for them to help them get back into those school systems. And kind of echoing what Dave said, mental health plays a big part in it for the youth and the family. So some of the strategies we've taken is kind of a 2-generation approach where we don't just work with the youth, we'll work with the whole family and help them and link them to services. In our intake process, it takes 2 to 3 days in our intake process. And within the first appointment, we partnered with an addiction clinic locally, and they help us with transportation, and we help with transportation on that. We make them an appointment day 1. The day that they step into our office, we get on the phone and call the behavioral health agency and make a case management appointment with them. So they're seen within a week's time of meeting with us. So just to try to help them get past those initial appointments and getting them set up. So those are kind of some of the strategies we've taken to help our youth and the families.
And I noticed, I switched jobs recently, and I moved over to the Circle of Life School working as a dean of students. And when I did that, I noticed there was a lot of, how could I put that? When the kids come in and they're not receiving like their special ed stuff. They're not receiving their screenings. They're not receiving the different things. And it's not just COLA. It's like through everywhere, every school that we dealt with, right? So that's one thing that we worked with our case managers to do, or what I've suggested to them since I've left, is that they get more involved in that process so we can work on those behaviors, right? So if a kid is coming into school, they have some behavior issues, they need mental health help, they need this and this and this in order to be successful. Our case manager or the case managers now are stepping in to make sure that those procedures or those things are followed so the kid can be successful. There's a lot of different ways that a case manager can step in and advocate for that youth, and that's just one of the ways. I mean, we had a lot of issues with our mental health teams and with substance abuse, that when they come in and do their Rule 25 assessment to see where they're supposed to be placed, there was a lot of time the connection wasn't made, where there was appointments made and the kids wouldn't show up, or this would happen and that. So they discharge them. And then once they discharge them, then it would go back in violation and they'd end up in a lockup because they weren't following the recommendations of their chemical use assessments. So when we looked at all that and seeing what the issue was, well, then we started transportation. We started becoming that person that was like the communication center between substance abuse and the court system, and between mental health and the court system, to try to keep these kids from being sent back for reasons out of their control. So there's a lot of different things that a person is going to have to do within your court system to be able to provide a successful environment for those kids. But yet you also have to hold them accountable if they're the ones that are choosing not to show up for these things, or they're choosing to take a different path, right? We can do all the advocate, be the biggest advocate for them, but we can't do the work for them either. But we can be there to support them and help them through the process.
I think a big part of that, like you were saying, Dave, is building relationships with these kids and families and meeting them and visiting with them. I think, one of the things we really preach quite a bit in our court is that, our families and kids are experts in their own life. They have to tell us, some of the needs. And once we help, then that, moves to the accountability process of, once we try to help them eliminate those barriers and go with them, then it's their time to do the work. Also, because we put in the work with them. Another thing that we do, like with exploring and making connections with higher education and employment services, one thing we've worked to do is kind of link with our with some of our departments. We have an education department and an employment where once they reach a certain age, they can start getting into things like GED classes. So our education department will allow them to come in at 16 and work on their GED. We also work with them in going to Talking Leaves Job Corps, which is the local job corps near our area. Another thing we've done, and we, because each case is individual based, one of our boys in our court ended up getting kicked out of school over having substances on him at school. The school was not wanting him back in for the entire year, but we knew that wouldn't be good for him if he sat at home all day, because his home life wasn't the best also. And so we advocated really hard for him to get back into school, and for us to work, letting the school know that we were working with him and we also were holding him accountable, and we would be checking in with him and also be a team. We wanted to be a team in that so we could help this one kid. And it worked because they let him come back into school. And so I feel like in the advocating and going into the education systems, also, I think one thing that we do is maybe give them some future orientation and show them and help them familiarize them with the fact that they can go on to college, they can go to a vocational school, and let them know that they can do those things, and showing them the opportunities that they have. And I know every tribe is different. With our tribe, I know there's quite a few scholarship options for them, and there's help for them. And so those are things that we work on exploring with them when we do their treatment planning in the beginning. Every one of our participants are required to have an educational plan and to be actively participating in some sort of education setting. And if they're close to the age of 17, we try to link them with career services so they know what else is out there in terms of vocation and then the funding for that vocation, because we can tell them that it's there, but if they do not know that there's a source to pay for it, then it seems impossible. So we work on a lot of those things with them during their treatment planning.
And then there's a fine line you got to follow too, because some of these kids, we expect them to go to college and we expect them to do all these great things, and some of them don't want to do that. Some of them want to go out and do, like he's mentioned, the trade schools, and they want to go be a carpenter. They want to go work at the casino. That's their goal, and it's like, how can we make sure that they get, like you said, the GED or their high school education and start with that, right? And it's kind of what we talked about earlier, I think, on the meeting that we had, is that a lot of these kids are being told from the time they're little that they can only do so much in life, right? They're expected to be not to be successful. So when you're trying to change that whole mindset, they're receiving pressure at home to stay and do the things that, not to be successful, or, you can only achieve so much, and we're telling them they can achieve more, and we're putting added expectations on them. So it's really hard to walk that line to where you don't lose them, because they're feeling like you're putting so much more on top of them when their expectations were a lot less than what you could see that they could actually achieve and be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree, because I feel like when in the implementation process, especially in the beginning, I feel like the biggest thing you can do is give your program grace, because there's so much room, so many things that we have to, as staff, I feel like the biggest thing is learn from them and learn from the experience and go back and be flexible and adaptable and say, this maybe doesn't work. Because I agree, Dave, that in the beginning, when we're dealing with substance use, the biggest thing is to get them to stop using substances. And sometimes throwing too many things at them at the beginning is hard. And I can tell you, we are even in the process. We meet with our advisory committee once a month to discuss things that we need to change. One of the things I know that will be on the discussion table is, do we require the school education part right at the beginning? Because they're battling their addiction right at the beginning, right? They're having a hard time even doing that and coming to terms with that life is going to change. You know, the life that they know and the life that they've been sometimes taught, or, you know, as we know, generational issues, that's what they know. And so, and also we have to be mindful to not go into somebody's home or into their lives and say, this is wrong. Like, because, you know, we aren't anybody to tell someone their life is wrong. You know, we just need to show them different means and methods to work on what's been happening. So I feel like that's something that we try to really do, to be mindful of with a lot of the families and kids we work with. And that is advocating too to different services such as social services for them to keep some of our kids placed in their homes.
We do have one comment. We have one comment for the group. It says, we've scheduled monthly meetings with community partners, including other potential resources that we invite to come and have discussions. How we can work together, but also hear what the potential gaps and issues and concerns may be. It's helped us a lot to increase our successful progression with our clients and the team in general. But it's also a way to provide information to all of the agencies that partner with the youth and families. So it's a good comment with regards to the subjects that you're currently discussing.
Well, it makes, I mean, you can have your one case manager going out there doing all these things, but when you get a team effort going and you have everybody on the same page and you're sharing information back and forth, man, it'll just blow your mind how much progress you can make just by communicating with each other. And it's hard, and there's no reason for it to be hard. Everybody has got like these little silos up and they're trying to, I guess, do things in their own way or through their own programming and stuff. But man, when you can all come together and share that information and give everybody a better understanding, like mental health can give you a better understanding of why this kid's struggling in school, or chemical dependency can give you a better understanding of why he's having a harder time getting off that drug of choice. And then the case managers giving back the information about what's going on in the families and communicating that, and everybody just piling all that information together, man, it can make your wellness course soar. But it's mainly getting through that with your MOUs or your confidentiality statements and stuff like that, and respecting each other and listening to everybody's opinions. I mean, it's crazy how that can just make things grow and go.
I do want to give credit to the person. I was remiss in mentioning her name. It was Chantel Cloud that mentioned that comment, which I thought was very timely.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please.
Well, one thing that we were doing back on White Earth, I guess the question is, let's discuss the different ways our communities are addressing youth substance related behavior. some of the things that we were doing back on White Earth was providing safe environments for the kids to go, like sober events, different things that we could do in the community. A lot of times programs will take their kids and they'll just, do program related activities. So they're with just a few people and they're not really seeing how many people are actually out in the community that are sober and wanting to stay sober and wanting to do the good things, And then the other thing is really getting our traditions and culture back, connecting them with spiritual people, with elders, with different people in a community that maybe have lived the life that they are currently living, and sharing their stories about how they trained or how they changed and move forward. Like I said before, and I know people have, if they've attended different sessions I've been on before, I mean, we've had just movie nights where kids were able to come in and just sit down and watch a movie, and half of them never even watched a movie. They just all laid down, went to sleep, because it was probably the first time that they felt safe in however long to be somewhere where they could just let everything just dump, and just lay down and relax. There was no reason to be out and using, so those are some of the different things that we've tried. But the cultural aspect of things was our greatest connection. I mean, to get our kids to go to ceremonies, get our kids to start using language. When I was managing this Circle Back program in White Earth, to graduate that program, they'd had to know 100 words when they left the program. They had to know certain ceremonies and what they were for. They needed to report some of that stuff back to us and let us know that they were learning from it, So there's so many different things that a person can do, and you just let your mind run, and providing those sober places for these kids to be, and giving them sober activities. And they're not going to change all at once, but in time, they'll start getting more involved with those things.
We kind of took our cue from White Earth and in terms of the cultural activities. And I can tell you that is one of the biggest things that our kids love. We actually do an incentive draw once a month in court. So if they've been compliant with their mental health appointments and they've been compliant with other activities we've asked them to do, we do a drawing. And one participant will get a draw of they get to miss one court hearing, and one of the drawings can be they get to miss an activity. And they will opt to not do the missed activity. They will go ahead and put it back. Because and one thing we found is that they want the cultural activities. They want to learn and know more about themselves. And it gets them entered back into a healthy community setting, and substituting the feelings that they get from substances with the good feelings of natural things, of being out there and playing. We play a lot of stickball, which is pretty, it's quite a bit of physical activity, and they love it. Some of our guys in the beginning were very hesitant to play, and then now they ask to come out and play extra. They want to play more games. We do things of one thing that we talk about in our court is that we have to have relaxing time too, just non-purposeful time you don't do anything but just have a good time. And so one of the things, and this was it helped in two ways. We did an Easter egg hunt, which is kind of weird with kids at that age. But we made them come out and hunt Easter eggs, and they loved it. They thought it was fun. We took lots of pictures, and they all ran out and hunted the eggs. And the thing is that we invited people within our department and communities to come out too and participate and watch. And it kind of softened their views of the kids, because in the beginning, kind of the stance was we wouldn't transport our kids unless it was only by our probation. And as we're moving along, that we've realized that that's maybe not the path to go, and it softened people's views by getting to see them be kids, and they got to be kids. So I think that those are kind of methods we've used to address substance related behavior, replacing it with good things. We also have our behavioral health department who they have a program called the Hero Project, and that's specifically for youth, mental health services for youth. So our tribe as a whole is doing quite a bit to address substance use. behaviors within this community. We also have a Jack Brown program, which is alcohol and a drug and alcohol inpatient program for youth. So we have partnered with them in our court, and we do that also. We call it a sanction, but we also have kind of changed the language in that and not calling it. At the beginning we called it a sanction. Now we do not, because it shouldn't be a punishment to get help. And so if we have a point where we aren't getting compliance, or a youth is at the level that they're going to harm themselves or someone else by the substances they're using, then a lot of times we'll issue a 30-day stay in Jack Brown. And we've partnered with them to quickly get our youth there. Also, a lot of times some of our youth don't have clothes and things like that. So we also try to work on that. And that would be one big suggestion I would give to any program, is that to start gathering a clothing closet, a hygiene closet, and things of that nature. Because a lot of times when your kids go to those places, they go with nothing. And it's hard for them to go to anyway, but it's hard for them to go with nothing. So we have started doing that, gathering little things like that.
We do have one question from Rhonda DeConti. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Do you have them in court sessions together? I'm assuming it's your participants.
Okay. Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, in White Earth that we did, we had everybody, when they attended court, everybody, all the kids were a part of it. And you know, some people say it's not a good thing. It should be individualized, and these things shouldn't be talked about, and everything else. But I think what our judges kind of went for is that, you know, you get to see that everybody's being treated the same. You get to see that everybody is, there's consequences for actions. There's a lot of different things like that, is where our judges were kind of thinking back in the day. And I kind of did agree with that. But some of the, like you were mentioning, substance abuse issues and different things like that, you know, we're always on the substance abuse side of things, that's supposed to be kept quiet and in between the individual and the counselor or whoever. But yet I think it was a good thing to kind of have those kids all together, so they seen that everybody was going through the same struggles and everybody was being treated the same. And they got to see that if something went wrong, that there was a consequence, you know, and that kind of helped change some of the other kids' behaviors.
Point two was, does your current programming assist you in a trauma-informed approach?
I think pretty much, I'm sorry, but I think everything that Leah's talked about, that all goes towards working towards that trauma-informed approach too. It's non, I don't even know the word for it, but the kids are able to come out and just be themselves. They're not being re-traumatized on what's going on. They're able to just to come out, and if they want to share, they can share. Some of the things that we did with our trauma-informed approach was to integrate our culture in with our mental health. And we got a lot of kickback from mental health. They didn't like that idea. You know, a lot of our mental health professionals think, you know, you went through the schooling and you went through everything and you were taught a certain way of doing things, and that's the right way to do it. And they didn't really want to adapt to the cultural side of things. But the way I seen it is that, what a support, right? What a support to our culture to have mental health to come in and assist them, right? And I know we've talked about a few different things in the past about, you know, like mental health, and, you know, I think the topic was brought up today about schizophrenia and different things. Well, that's why you'd have mental health come support our culture. All the different coping skills, all the different things that we have in our culture have been forgotten by our youth. They've never been taught. So those things work so well with our mental health if they decide to work with each other and move forward. So that's one thing that we really pushed was to bring our mental health in to support our culture and dealing with trauma. I mean, we've dealt with trauma for hundreds of years, you know, we've survived it. we were able to move forward. And I think our biggest thing is some of the teachings have disappeared, and that's why we're struggling now, you know.
We like to have discussions during our talking circle time, which we do a court. Our court's hosted in a circle. So we do like a table setting. All of our judge, our prosecutor, our director of our department, our probation comes in. We partnered with behavioral health, and our clinical supervisor from the Jack Brown program comes in to advise also. And we let the kids know that we're not making unilateral decisions. We're not making individual decisions because we're not individually doing this. This is a team, a partnership, and we're all working together. So we do it in that setting, and we actually don't even host our court in the courtroom purposefully because we want them to know this is a diversion program. You have this opportunity to stay out of that big court. And so we're keeping you in this court, and it's a non-adversarial court. We're not in there to bicker and argue. We're in there to have discussions, and it's a roundtable discussion. We have the kids go around and report what they do. A new thing that we've implemented is that some of the things is that when we have substance using families or kids, the relationships become so tumultuous that the fighting happens all the time in the home, that it becomes so negative. So one thing we do is that, because we also will report on what the kids are doing, behavioral health tells how many appointments they've made and if they're participating. But one thing we have the parents do now is we have them report 3 positive things that their kids do in this between courts, so that they're reporting good things and the kids are hearing those good things from their parents, and it's positive. So we're also trying to look forward and moving forward in that. So those are some of our court setting. And then some of the trauma-informed approaches we take is kind of like Dave said, is incorporation of culture. We don't want to re-traumatize them, but also we need to educate them a little bit on where we came from. How did our tribes and how did, their tribal people with generational trauma hit a little history, because sometimes I think when they gain an understanding of who they are and what happened, it kind of empowers them. In our handbook, we put a little statistic in there, and about there's a small percentage of Indigenous people survived, and that they are descendants of those survivors. So they're very strong and resilient, and to kind of build from those strengths. And so those are some of the approaches we take, and we really work hard not to re-traumatize them. We do screeners in the beginning, like the ACE screener. We do like a kind of a CAMS assessment. We do ask suicide questions and different things of that nature in order to kind of get a good idea of where they are at mentally, so we don't do more damage in the process of working on their substance use.
We do have two comments. First from Chantel Cloud. She indicates that we have all our kids together in the court. We also see it as a support for the youth and the families, and it's also a way to help have each other be accountable. Also in the tribal setting, it helps to go back to the traditional way where we all are together, and it ties one to the other. Healing them heals the community and the tribe. They understand that they are not the only one, which a lot of people feel, and makes harder for them to overcome things at times. We also have another grant to get the community trained in trauma-informed systems of care, so everyone understands how we can approach our clients and support them together. Our second comment is from Leah Kingbird, and it's more of a question. Is it just the kids that come into the courtroom, or both kids and parents, guardians together? Thank you, Leah.
We bring in parents, and we bring in both parents and guardians to work with our, into the courtroom. That way they're on the same page as the youth and everything. So we've always incorporated the parents and guardians at our courts.
We do the same. And then we also have kind of unique situations where we've even had situations where the kid does not have a parent who will come into the court with them, or doesn't come to court, or maybe could be in jail or not able to. So we've had even situations where the kid's older sibling comes with them. And sometimes we have step parents that the kids don't have a really great relationship with, and to kind of give them a little control and power and say so, we do ask their permission if the other person can come in. And I agree with Chantel on the peer accountability. One thing that we did take some advising from our youth council. We have a tribal youth council within within Cherokee Nation. And we've met with them, and they did help guide some of our policies in saying that, because typically, drug courts are no fraternization. Well, that doesn't work for tribal populations, and it 100% does not work for kids. And so their biggest influences are their peers. And the peer accountability has been excellent. I mean, our kids do kind of hold each other accountable, and they also lift each other up. I mean, that's been some of the most heartwarming things to see, is when our kids tell each other that, it's going to be okay. We had one kid really having a hard time, and a lot of the boys did talk to him, and they told him it's going to be okay, and kind of shared some experiences with him.
We do have another question. It's from Rhonda DeConti. How long are the programs?
White Earth, we started out with a 6 to 9 month program, but realistically it'll go longer. And it all depends on each individual. We've had kids come through and blow through it 9 months, 6 months, 9 months, that have no problem with it. But then we have kids that have struggled, and each case you have to take separately. You have to take an accountability or an account of their mental health, chemical dependency, where they're at. And then you got to explain that to all the kids when you first start, that it's not a cookie cutter thing where you're going to come in and everybody's going to be done in 6 to 9 months. Is what we learned, is that it could take up to a year. It could take up to a year and a half. And any other thing too, is that if you put a schedule on them and you say, well, it's going to be a 6 to 9 month program. We've had kids that just figured that they can just sit there and do nothing for 6 to 9 months and they were going to graduate. Or some of them have said 6 to 9 months, that's so long. I don't want to do this program. I could go to probation and go do this, and I could get out of here quicker. And where we just kind of look at them and say, it's up to you on how fast this programming is going to take, right? If you come into the program and you're here for a year and a half, that's because we have to work on things, and you need to be bought into it to make it shorter than that, So once you put like a timeline on it, it has already set somebody up thinking they're going to fail. I'm not going to make it 6 to 9 months. I'd rather go sit and not have to deal with my probation officer, or just see my probation officer once or twice, because it's easier, it's simpler. So try not to say it's going to take X amount of time to your clients. Just say it's up to you on how fast you want to work the program and how much effort you're going to put into the program.
Yeah, we kind of do a similar thing in talking to them on an individual basis, and tell them that you individually make the time. Typically we tell them a typical time is 8 to 12 weeks per phase, and ours is a 4-phase program. So it could run 8 months, it could run 12 months, it could run longer than 12 months. And Dave and I have had previous discussions together on the situation where the kids will say, this amount of time I can go to probation, and like Dave said, I can just see them once a month and know I'm on drug test when I come to court. And we've had that happen a couple of times. And typically, we just tell them it is a choice. Everything's a choice here. And you can look at it as it's going to take you 12 months, or this could be 12 months and then the start of your life. Because are you living right now? Whenever you're using substances and you're in and out of trouble, is this life? So we kind of pose questions to them and challenge them in that way when they start talking about timeframes and what's the better choice for them. So we are careful with that timeframe too, because when you say 1 year, it looks like a lot to a kid.
Okay, if we can, next slide, please.
Next one is Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court staff involvement hiring process. In White Earth, we're public law 280, so we have to work with the state in order to get our kids from the criminal justice system referred into White Earth. So we pretty much involved everybody in hiring processes, just to kind of, I guess, to gain, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, but to gain more involvement. So that's one thing that we did. We'd have our case managers be a part of it. I, as a program manager, was a part of it. And then we'd reach out to some of our state partners, our mental health partners or chemical dependency partners to all be a part of the interview process. That really helped, in my opinion, because everybody felt like they were getting a little bit of everything that they needed for that person to be successful. So that's one thing we did with our hiring process, is we tried to involve as many as we could on the team in the interview processes.
We kind of do, our department is underneath our justice department, our marshal service. And so we involve our Department of Juvenile Justice staff in the hiring process. And we do pose questions to the person being interviewed about kind of basically questions of how punitive they would be with kids or understanding of kids. And also kind of segueing into the training and to emphasize willingness to expend efforts on and training opportunities. One thing that we do is we do a lot of behavioral health training in our office, and trainings on brain development, and also understanding that the population we're working with, because we work under our juvenile justice, is that we're working with kids, and to understand that these are the things that we can't have an expectation on them for perfection, and we can't have an expectation that they're making adult decisions, even though we know sometimes they're committing adult crimes. They are not in an adult brain to fully understand the consequence or have a stop to tell them to stop and know that there's big consequences waiting for them. So those are some of the things that we do with the staff. And I can't stress enough, I feel like if I could give any advice, is that connecting in the planning phase with any community partners, anybody who can offer any kind of cultural activities or insight or stories, and just your tribal stories on, understanding why and how we were supposed to live, and maybe how we've gotten away from that. Because I think that really empowers the youth when they have that knowledge. And so I feel like that has been a very big part of our court, and that's been very helpful for our kids. So making connections with other programs and just community members, because really it takes a community effort when working with kids. You have lots of people you have to reach out to. We also, we aren't a public law 280. I'm in Cherokee Nation is within Oklahoma, and I don't know if many people are familiar with the McArthur ruling, and Cherokee Nations was the Hogner ruling. So now we have jurisdiction over our tribal population within our reservation. So that has kind of changed things a little bit for us. So we can prosecute other tribal, any tribal member residing on the reservation, and we work with the youth that from other tribes. So we have reached out to neighboring tribes to work with them and try to partner with them on any resources and things they have, and just building resources so that we can connect them and just practice some cultural humility and understanding every tribe is not the same. So we want to connect them to what, some of their tribal stuff too.
I see that the question on training that can emphasize staff's willingness to expand efforts. To me, it's leadership more than training. If you have leaders, if you're running the program, if you're a coordinator, manager, or whatever you are, you encouraging your staff to get out in the community. If you encourage your staff to think out of the box to get the information out about your programming into the community by doing different events, different things, that's gonna pay back tenfolds over sending people to training to come back and learn how to go out in the community. It's like, get them out there, support them, share the information about your program, whether you think it's positive or negative, whatever it is, get it out there, get it out in the community, let them know what you're doing with the different things that you're doing to promote positive behavior. And you get a lot of feedback from your community, and take that in. When they're telling you, hey, I think this would work, don't just kind of blow them off and go, oh, I'm the professional here, I know what's going on, I've done this for 20 years. No, listen to them, because things have changed. It's amazing the information that you can get from your community to better your programming.
I think Dave touched on that with regards to your introductory sessions for your juvenile healing and wellness and your core team development, and then the movements towards signing MOUs and MOAs with those programs. So I think that's where you start, is that's the planning process, is coming to those agreements with the stakeholders. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. Ways to gain community support.
I feel like ways in gaining community support is something kind of Dave said, is going out and sharing good stories with the community, and also having the kids go out in the community setting. They belong in the community and that's their community, and letting them see, because I think sometimes people may have the perception of some of the kids we work with that they're going to do something wrong out there, or they have to be, I think that they don't remember sometimes that they're kids. And so sometimes I think too, getting to share the good stories of the positive things that they're doing helps to soften the community on the kids that you're working with.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know, like, we started out a youth, or actually we wanted to work with elders to, when our youth were acting up, that we could have them go over and do some community services with the elders. And I'll never forget, our one chief of police said, no, we can't do that because they're going to end up being a victim. I was like, who's going to be a victim? Well, the elder. So, well, you don't know that. You know what I mean? Some of these things that these kids have done, they've done because they were under they were high, they were doing stuff. You know what I mean? It was stuff that other contributing factors to it. And it's like, you can't say that. And then once we started getting them out to help, and they started making a connection, and they started doing this, well, then, like you were saying, that kind of disappears then, because there's a positivity out there. A lot of these kids are being judged by the negative things that they've done, and they're not really being seen for who they really are. So doing these, like you mentioned, doing these things in the community and getting the kids out there and showing everybody that they're really not as bad as you think they are. They just need a little bit of direction. The networking with the state and county justice systems, one thing that we did was that we put together a 5-10 minute presentation, and it was like a little PowerPoint presentation, and we took off and we went to the district courts, we went to county attorneys, we went to ICW, we went to all these different people that were going to be a part of our programming, and we explained everything, all of our intentions, everything that we were going to do in this 10-minute presentation. Anything over 10 minutes, they're not going to listen to, because they're thinking about the next meeting that they got to be at, right? So put together something short and sweet that's going to highlight your programming, but then also let them know your goal is not to be a one and done, right? That you're not just here to get this grant from OJJDP and in 4 years we're just going to walk away from it and leave everything just kind of hanging. That's one thing that we did. We went in, and I gave them my word that I would try everything I could do to make it self-sustaining, so we could keep reaching out to these kids and getting the help that they needed. And they listened. And when they listened, less than 6 months, we had 20 some kids in the program, because they believed in what we were saying. And we took that 10 minutes just to promote our program and let them know what we were going to do.
We aren't a public law 280, so our course works a little different, but we do invite in our stakeholders and stakeholder and advisory meetings. We invite from different disciplines, and we invite different court judges also to participate, so that they know about our program, and that we have opened up referral processing, because typically our referrals came from law enforcement. We opened up to take referrals from our ICW also, to kind of build partnerships with them, so we can have a better communication with them. And so just networking in that way, and kind of like Dave said, just to let them know what your program's about, and also really kind of define what the parameters are, because sometimes they get confused on what you can and can't do. And that can also make for a bad relationship, because they may feel you can do more than you can, or, you're not doing enough. So that way you kind of define what you do, and you let them know who you are, and that also that you're there to help. And just kind of, we've extended our referral processing just so we can try to help other departments as well. Because at the end of the day, I always try to do it as I feel like it's a divorced couple situation sometimes with tribes and states. You know, they don't get along. They may not always see things the same way, but at the end of the day, we're all here for the people in the community and our kids. And that's what it's about. And that's what we have to work on, is that we have to work on doing the best things we can for our kids and our families. And
I think, and that's a great compliment to one of our comments that we have from Chantel Cloud. She indicates that I think it's good for folks to know that this is a fluid process and that there should be a time to review policies, procedures, protocols, and MOUs and other agreements. But it's also great to have the staff be involved in other ways so that they can participate in community activities like Boys and Girls Clubs, community action events, things of that nature, to show the interaction between the systems, which is what the objective is, to get the, meeting and greeting and connecting with other criminal justice systems, county and state officials. And one of the things that I want to include is don't forget the power of social media for your marketing of your strategy, because young people really gravitate towards social media, and using that platform to advertise who you are and what you're doing is really important. So if we can move on to slide 9, please. Oh, well, it looks like that was the last. Did you finish your thoughts, Leah, on the previous slide, and Dave with the previous slide? If you want to just
I had
finish your thoughts.
One thing just to mention, like the partnerships between the states and stuff. Actually on YouTube, there's a video out there. I think it's Gawing Gayabe or UR. That was done on White Earth, and it was supposed to be a video about culture and how culture was going to help programming. And we had youth in the program at the time that participated in this video. And we also had state county attorneys and probation officers and everything else that were a part of that video. And it was like one of the first times I think that had happened in our area, to where the state had stepped up and said, hey, we're going to be a part of this, and really showed some strong support for our tribal juvenile wellness court. So anytime that you're sitting there thinking that these things are impossible, that you're going to have a hard time and these guys won't take you serious, just stay to it. Just get out there and promote. Don't let that negativity get you. Be positive, promote positivity. It'll always come back. The positive energy will come back. If you promote negative energy will come back. So stay positive and push hard, and just support the community, and they'll support you.
And we are coming up on the hour. If you wanted something else to comment on, Leah, real quickly, please.
I just think that, just like Dave said, staying positive, in that sometimes it's really easy to get cynical in these situations in all aspects of these courts. And I think that it is as being a leader or coordinator or any staff member within these courts, I think it's always good to stay positive and put our best foot forward and trying to build the relationships and connections, because it only benefits our families and kids. And at the end of the day, that's why we're here. And so I think just stay positive in everything we do, and things work out.
And for those of you that had some comments with regards to activities that both Leah and David talked about, if you want to contact the Tribal Youth Resource Center, there are a number of opportunities if you do struggle or have or need activity-based funding. There is a drug-free communities grant through SAMHSA that is actually substance abuse reduction activities for youth. And it's really a great opportunity for tribes that want to do ongoing scheduled activities like that Dave spoke about, with safe havens for them to have events and activities. So, and if we can get the last slide, please, if you can take the time to complete our evaluation. It's very short but sweet, and things that we can gain and gather from. Is there anything else that we need, Antonio, with regards to just the time frame for them to complete the eval?
We'll give you about 2 minutes to complete the evaluation. Please take the time to do so. It really helps with future online learning events. Thank you.
And I also want, while you're writing, I also want to take the time to thank Leah Hitcher and David McArthur for their insight, their field knowledge, their expertise and experience with regards to the subject matter for today. I also really want to take the opportunity to thank Sydney Matheson for as our youth ambassador that was able to come on with us for a period of time and provide our opening dialogue and great feelings and thoughts for our session. So if everyone is complete with the evaluation, I think that will conclude our Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court training for the day, our online learning event. And we really want to thank you. And as David and Leah both said, positive energy, positive activity, and support and encourage our young people to be healthy. So thank you all for attending today.